Prima, do you ever catch yourself turning into your parent?
All the time, especially since I am the oldest. I always find myself regañando a mi hermano the way that my mom did and reminding me of all the consejos too that my mom gave me. I usually find myself also passing those along to my brother. What about you, Prima?
Same. And this is actually a perfect segue because in this episode titled Yo Soy Porque Usted Es, le damos un homenaje a nuestros papás y a los padres de todos los hijos de inmigrantes por sus sacrificios, consejos, resiliencia y sí, también los regaños. My name is Andrea and I am joined by my co-host and prima.
Hi, everybody. I am the Prima. My name is Jack, and welcome to our podcast, Ponle Acento.
So, Prima, why don't we start by sharing a consejo that has stuck with us up until this point of our lives that our parents or parent have given us? What would you say is a consejo that has really stuck with you?
I think the consejo that my mom has given me that has made me the person I am today is always reinforcing the fact that she believes in me. A lot of people know that I love to study. I've always been really good at school, but it all stemmed from her. My mom wasn't able to finish college, but she was a really good student. Not only that, but she was a very social person. She had her friends and she loved going to school. And so when I had the privilege of, starting my school, I remember coming home and I came with my Student of the Month flag, and we were all very, very excited and really happy about this. And every year after that, I was always Student of the Month, always, always, always. And my mom engraved in me that I was going to university. And I remember one time in class, I think someone from a college came and was asking, like, who wants to go to college? And I didn't raise my hand. And people just looked at me like, don't you want to go to college? I'm like, no, I'm going straight to university. I didn't know the difference at the time, but my mom said university. So if they didn't say university, I would not raise my hand. So my mom has always had this belief in me that I'm going to do great things. And thanks to her always reinforcing that in me, I've been able to accomplish a lot. And part of that too, I know some of our viewers might not be religious, but we grew up Catholic. And so my mom always also mentioned, si Dios está conmigo, ¿quién está contra mí? So if God is with me, who will be against me? So every time something was going wrong, my mom always reminded me of the power that I have, the fact that I am very intelligent, very independent, very resilient. And so I think that consejo has really, really helped me along the way, especially in moments where life might not go the way that I wanted or things just don't go the way I planned. But regardless of that, my mom has a lot of faith in me. She has a lot of trust. And I think had she not reinforced that growing up, I don't think I would have been as confident as I am now. And again, I have so much power, and thanks to her, I've been able to do so much.
I love that. You bring up a really good point about education. I do believe that not just like in our family, but I think a lot of households that have parents who are immigrants, there's this value of education, right? Education is seen as a way for upward mobility. And I think a lot of the times it's really appreciated by our parents because they didn't get the opportunity to. And I remember like growing up, I don't know if this is something that you have heard previously. And I preface this by saying that every single job and every single position and title deserves honor and respect and dignity. Yet my parents would always tell me, like, trabaja con tu mente para que no tengas que trabajar con tus manos. And so I think we begin to see a lot of this like academic excellence from a lot of children of immigrants because that was just really engraved in us for, as long as we can remember, as young as we were, we just knew that education was we had no choice. We were going to get our education. Going on to the consejo that I want to share. And we were talking during our episode prep, and it was really hard for me to come up with one because I had three and I was like, Prima, I don't know which one to choose. And so I finally ended up choosing one que es un dicho que se usa bastante en hogares de habla hispana. Perdón. ¿A quién madruga Dios le ayuda? So again, ¿a quién madruga Dios le ayuda? My mom would always say this if you all know me and personally, you know that I wake up pretty early and I've always been a morning person. And I get that from my mom. My mom was always up at 6 a.m. So shout out to my mom. She listens to our podcast. My mom nunca le pega calor. Like mi mamá, she is just like, it's not cold enough. And so I always remember growing up and, it was 6 a.m. in the morning in like the middle of November y abría todas las ventanas y todas las puertas para que entrara el aire fresco. And I'm like, Mom, it's so cold. And so he was like, para que se levanten, para hacer qué hacer y para hacer los mandados. And, that was always something that I would roll my eyes as a teenager. But I think as an adult, I appreciate the true meaning of aquí en madruga Dios le ayuda. I think really the meaning behind it is like the hustle, the hard work ethic, that if you're willing to put in the work, so very similar to you, you are going to essentially reap what you've sowed because of all the hard work that you have done. And so for me, shout out to my mom. She really instilled that on me. And I think part of that too was like advocating for myself. Because if I was advocating for myself, that meant that I was also going to really get those resources that were needed.
I can definitely relate to that because another thing my mom would always tell me is que no me tengo que quedar callada. So essentially, you need to speak up for yourself. I remember when I first went for college, I didn't know anything, but somehow I found my way to the financial aid office and I was constantly fighting them to ask for more funding, or if there was something I had to sign and I didn't know what it was, always going to ask for help. And that, again, has helped me along the way because had I stayed silent, I wouldn't have learned so much. And that has carried me a long way too. Even when I had my first apartment, I had to sign a lease for the first time and I was so scared because it was just going to be myself. And I was really scared to mess things up. I always tell my brother too, you always have to ask. Otherwise, things can go south and we can't be in certain positions given that, we have a single mom and we can't always rely on her financially specifically. So that has really helped me. And I constantly try to engrave that in my brother too, because even the smallest of questions, we might think they're dumb. And I always try to remind myself, they are not dumb questions. This could literally be a situation where it saves me or I end up making a mistake. So that has really helped me. And I think my mom has really appreciated the fact that she knows for sure that I am one to always speak up and advocate for myself. And I've done that at work. I've taught others. I've taught my students at times too that they have to advocate for themselves, or I start showing them how to do it and how to send an email, or I am there by their side to give them that courage to be able to advocate for themselves. And even though it can be tiring to do it all the time, I think that's still a really important life skill. So thankfully, I am one to always fight and advocate for myself and for others as well.
I love that. As you were talking about like the importance of advocating for ourselves and, how really we learned that through our parents, it reminded me of a story just now. I know we didn't talk about it during our prep meeting, but my senior year of high school, so going into college, I needed a new laptop. And so we never really do Black Friday. But this time around, we were going to do Black Friday because I needed a new laptop. And so my mom, again, she, like, if my mom had a tattoo with her life logo, it would be aquí en madruga Dios me ayuda, literally.
Yeah.
So yeah, my mom got us up at 4 a.m. and she was like, you're coming with me because this is your laptop. We're going to go get that laptop. And so we went to Walmart. Yes, that's where I got my laptop. We went to Walmart and there was a whole bunch of people like just waiting in front of the laptops because they were locked up, right? Again, it was Black Friday. This was, again, I'm going to age myself, but that's okay. Probably in 2012, 2013. I know Black Friday has changed now, but just to give you a little bit of a visual, we had folks that were just waiting in front of the shelves that were locked. And, we're like kind of looking around and we were not the first ones there. Like those people beat us to it. and there's like no employees and no one's doing anything. They're just standing there. And so my mom goes and finds an employee and asks, we need we need the shelf to be open. And so, yeah, the employee comes over, opens the shelf, gives my mom the laptop, and out we went through the door. I just remember feeling so embarrassed because I was like, Mom, those people were waiting. And my mom, I remember my mom saying like, pues estaban esperando porque querían, like todos tienen boca, que hablen. And so I just remember being like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And likewise, I had moved from first summer my freshman year out of the Sac State dorms. And, like move out days of many of you listeners could probably relate to it. Move out days are pretty hectic. Like all the parents are there and people are like taking up the elevators and the stairs, and it's just a lot. And so my mom helped me move out my first summer at Sac State. And she took my Tia Carmen, our Tia Carmen. So shout out Tia Carmen. And we were just moving out. And I went down to the reception to get in line for the dolly so that I could carry my mini fridge and, my microwave and things like that. But the line was really long. And so I turn around and as I'm still waiting in line, my mom and my Tia Carmen are like coming down the stairs, and behind them are like 4 football players that never in my life had I spoken to. My entire freshman year. One of them was carrying the mini fridge like nothing. The other one's carrying like my bedding, and the other one's the microwave. And so my mom takes them through the back door, which we're not even supposed to like park there because it's like a red line for firefighters. And she like backed out the car. And she got everything in, and off we went. So talk about the power of advocacy.
No, I can literally imagine your mom being like, sí, cómo no, misa, vámonos. Your mom's a rock star too for that. That's amazing.
Yeah,
I know.
again, the power of advocacy and the power of quien madruga, Dios le ayuda. So I love it. So I know there's like so much appreciation for our parents or parent now. But maybe at some point it wasn't always that way, or at some point it wasn't as intense as it feels now of like, wow, my mom, my dad are incredible people, right? We go through our teenage years and, a little bit of rebeldia, and that's okay. That's totally normal. But I think that there's also like an aha moment where we're like, oh my gosh, my mom is so cool, or my dad is so cool. Do you remember the moments that you were like, your heart like bursted of joy because your mom was that girl?
I actually want to start first by sharing that my relationship with my mom was actually very hard at first. I don't think I don't think I am the perfect daughter, but we went through a really rough patch, and it wasn't until later on that we were able to make amends and get out of a situation that was not helpful. And now my mom and I are so tight, and she's my everything. She's always been, but now more so, I see her in such a different light. And she reminded me of how important it is to not hold grudges and get along with everybody. And not get along as in, I'm going to go see them, I have to talk to them a fuerza, because doing things a fuerza is not helpful either. But being courteous with people, being kind to everybody, regardless of what they do to you. Obviously, you don't have to engage with them, but never wish them bad. If anything, we just move along with life. And it was a moment in my time where my mom was just reminding me of the importance of just getting along with everybody. And I realized after that, once I left being home, going to college and moving into the city, I started to get closer to my primas. I wasn't here, but I was always checking in with them. I started to talk to them more often. And I am in a place right now where I'm at peace because I get along with all my primas, and I might not hang out with them so often, but I am constantly, checking in with them, or I send a text here or there. Whenever I see them, we have conversations that last forever. So I think that is really important because then when I need them, they're there.
Mhm.
And that has been really important for me with all my padrinos too. She always reminds me to, if your padrinos don't call you, you call them. And so she's always taught me to be, kind and always remember about family.
Thank you for your vulnerability. And I do want to affirm you that it's funny because we are very rarely in like the same city, you and I, or even, or I mean, we're hardly ever like in the same zip code or even in like the same room. And so I
Yeah.
always feel like every time I see you, like we can catch up exactly where we left
Hmm.
off. And so I do believe that, even if there isn't the time or the capacity to check in with people on a daily or even a weekly basis, to do it every so often, but most importantly, to be able to wish them well and manifest well for people, I think definitely goes a really, really long way because there is space for everyone to succeed. And, es algo bonito no ser egoísta. We can share our happiness. We can also, in hard moments, we can also share our sadness too. So
Hmm.
a little bit of everything. I think for my dad, my aha moment was he always worked like different shifts. So my mom mainly worked the morning shifts. And so in the afternoon and at night, I was mainly with my mom along with my siblings. But my dad, he always had kind of like that night shift, which was really difficult for him and for our family because we only really got to see him, half of the day Saturday and on Sunday. But my dad's shift he would go into work at 4:30 in the afternoon. And so I grew up playing sports. It's something that I constantly do, right? It's a hobby that I've always really enjoyed. And so my games played in middle school, they would always begin at 3:30. And so it would take about 20 minutes for my dad to get to his work. So that meant that if he wanted to come see me play starting at 3:30, but he had to leave at 4:10, that meant that he would pretty much just see like 40 minutes of the game, which in many instances, like he could have chosen to say, Andrea will text me, or I mean, JK, my dad learned how to text last year. But, like Andrea will catch me up, like, and he'll call me like, ¿Cómo ganaron? ¿Cómo jugaste? Y, todas las cosas. But, my dad would pack up his food, and he would show up with his work boots, his um, uniform to go to work, and he would never miss a game. It's happy cheers and happy
Yeah.
memories. And so that was my aha moment for my dad. It was just like his constant showing up. Like he could have chosen not to show up before a 12-hour shift in the middle of the night, but my dad was always there. I think for me, my aha moment with my mom was, um, I mean, I've been in so much awe with my mom. She is the eldest daughter. She was never given the choice to finish school. And so from her siblings, uh, she is the only one who does not have a degree or an established career or had the chance to establish a career or get a degree or any sort of technical training. My mom went up to seventh grade, I think eighth grade actually. Yeah, she went up to eighth grade. So she finished junior high. Um, and my mom got married very young. She got married at 18 again. Eldest daughter behavior. And she had her first baby, my older sister, at the age of 19. And my mom continued to go to English classes and she continued to go to math classes. She learned all about decimals and fractions, not because she was getting a grade, but because she wanted to learn. Um, and so at one point, she then decided, if I'm already going to English classes, why don't I sign up next door to citizenship classes? And again, these were all things that she initiated on her own. Like nobody else before her did this. And so she signed up to do her citizenship classes and went through the whole process. And, she became a citizen. And I'm in awe of her because she went through that process with very little English and with an eighth grade education level. So every time I think about that for me is, that aha moment of like, well, you did that when you were 20? Like I was trying to figure out which cereal box to get when I was 20. Like you registered my older sister to the school district at the age of, 24. Like I was trying to see, if I was going to go to the Sacramento Kings game that night or go to the concert the next day. And so it's a lot of love for our parents and our family members. And, as you mentioned, I think that there is the ability to feel disappointment at times, but really trying to be intentional to get to a place where we feel peace for ourselves and peace to put out to the universe is really important. I love this episode. Thank you so much, Prima, for your vulnerability and for sharing these a little bit more personal stories that I think our listeners will hopefully learn a little bit more about who we are. Before we come to an end, I know a lot of it was consejos and advice today, but do you have any palabras de sabiduría?
Why don't you go first, Prima?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it is something that my maternal grandmother has always told me. And my grandmother heard this from my great grandmother. So it's like generational wisdom that like trickled down to me. And my grandma always says, uno nunca sabe hasta donde llega su sangre. So indicating that your situation now, you may be okay, but you don't know what your generation or your bloodline will have to face. And so for me, that's a reminder to be slow to judge. In fact, to not judge at all, to be empathetic, and to really, really, really have humility and be humble, because uno nunca sabe hasta donde llega su sangre. So shout out to my abuelita Aurora and my mama Luisa. Those words of wisdom continue with Andrea.
That's amazing. My consejo comes from my dad, actually. I wanted to share one. It is a consejo that my dad has given me for the longest time, and it is todos los sacrificios tienen su recompensa. Mine included leaving family and having to, venture out by myself, become more independent. But thankfully, everything has had its benefits. And I've accomplished so much. But again, I think my mom's consejo and my dad's go hand in hand, because there's a lot of sacrifices. But again, with me believing in myself, and as my mom says, when God is with me all the time, no one is against me. And thanks to that, we are persevered. And so just a reminder, every time that we are desperate for an answer or things don't go our way, just remember that there will be sacrifices along the way, but nonetheless, life moves on. It's not the end of the world. I always constantly have to remind myself of that. There's always a solution to everything except death. So those would be the consejos that I have for our viewers today.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, Prima. I really enjoyed this episode, and our next episode will actually air on Sunday, March 9th at noon. So listeners, please check us out in your in the platform in which you listen to your podcast. And with all of that being said, why don't we do our closing remarks? And Prima, I know that you go first, so I can go first this time around to kind of switch it up. So this podcast is brought to you by Andrea and Jack. It is co-hosted, co-produced, and co-directed by both Primas, Andrea and Jack. Editing of the recording content is done by Andrea and Jack. Social media and outreach is done by Jack. Research and on discussed topics is done by both Primas, and sources can be found on the link tree. We aim to make our platform nonpartisan in the case of an opinion being expressed by either. Those opinions belong solely to the person that expressed that opinion. For accessibility features on podcasts, please visit our YouTube channel for the captions. And Prima, where can folks find us on social media?
Yeah, so you can follow us on Ponle Acento Podcast on Instagram. And if you have any inquiries and you want to give us feedback, you can also feel free to email us at ponleacento.podcast@gmail.com.
Thank you, listeners, for allowing us to share space with you today. We hope that this is an episode that will hopefully make you reach out to parents of family, whether that family is by blood or chosen family. But let's surround ourselves with so much love, because in this world, in our current state, we need more love than we do hate. That is all.
Love, A and J.